playoff embarrassment for MK Dons last season. They went into the competition as significant favourites along with Doncaster, only to suffer an 8-1 aggregate defeat to Crawley Town. A humiliating way, I suppose, to miss out on promotion. Sorry, MK Dons fans, for reminding you. So what we'll be discussing in this podcast is how do MK Dons find a stronger mentality, especially in those crunch games against those teams around them where it really defines their season. How can they improve defensively, and how do they add that little bit more control to their wonderful chaos? This is the Summer Deep Dive on MK Dons. So I'm delighted to be joined by MK Dons fan Jonathan Harries for the first of a new series of Summer Deep Dives. I'm covering all 72 clubs between mid-June and mid-July. These are available on Twitter X. They're also available on YouTube and on Spotify once I've uploaded them. So go and subscribe if you haven't already. Jonathan, thanks so much for joining me. Really appreciate your time. Just sort of reflect on for me, if you will, last season, and I guess I suppose the disappointment of that Crawley defeat, which is bound to sting for a little bit.
Well, yeah, as you say, it stung for a good 10 days, 2 weeks. Being there in the second leg was one of the most. I really still don't know how to describe it. I mean, I've got to give Crawley all the credit because over both legs they were just phenomenal. Liam Kelly just ran that show. Danilo Orsi as well, and I think we just froze when it came to the big games. As you said in your introduction, we just froze, and I probably should have seen the signs of that coming towards the back end of the season. When you look at Stockport away, when you look at Mansfield at home, as good as our football has been, just when it really matters, we just haven't stepped up, because I think everyone predicted the MK Dons Doncaster playoff final, and it just didn't happen.
I suppose you would have looked in those big games to the likes of Alex Gilby and Warren O'Hora. I imagine Mike Williamson would have thought before those sorts of games that these are the big characters that we can sort of rely on to step up. Would you maybe attribute a little bit of blame for those two players? Not that they would be the sole reason for the capitulations, but maybe a little bit of blame for them maybe not quite doing it in those big games? Or do you think it's much more of a collective thing where they were doing their parts and maybe the others weren't sort of holding their own end?
I think a lot of it was. I don't like to single out individuals because it's a team game, but
sure.
Warren O'Hara certainly didn't cover himself in glory towards the back end of the season. If you add the fact that Jack Tucker was coming back from injury, and on hindsight now, I think he was rushed back a bit too soon, because he was nowhere near himself towards the end of the season. Same with Joe Tomlinson. I think he was rushed back for the playoffs, and he just didn't have the same effect he had all season. Then you get the fact that teams know if they get in amongst Lewis Bate and Jack Payne and don't let them have the ball, then it stifles everything MK Dons are good at. I mean, as good as Payne and Bate were in several games, and I can't believe both of them are on free transfers this summer. It goes to show that teams recognise if they could keep Payne and Bate quiet and wind up Max Dean, then basically we had nothing to offer, and it showed against Crawley. Really, Max Dean only had that scored in the home leg, had that one chance in the away leg that maybe it could have been different if we'd scored first at Crawley. We'll never know, but yeah, I think it was more of a collective. No one really stood out in the playoff games, particularly in a positive light.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to talk to you about that Payne-Bate midfield partnership, Jonathan, because as much as I totally recognise that you mentioned there that they both had a few really good games together, and are probably in isolation two of the best players in League Two. But I've always instinctively thought of Jack Payne as an attacking midfielder, someone who might play one of the two or one of the three behind a centre forward, depending on what formation he's part of. And maybe I've always thought of Lewis Bates as more of an 8 than a 6. So for me, you've got MJ Williams, who started 29 games last season, but he's not really, I wouldn't call him a Mike Williamson player. So for me, what MK Dons are absolutely crying out for this summer is a Connor Coventry type who can sort of plug gaps defensively and has that bit of defensive intelligence, but can also put their foot on the ball and just not even necessarily have an incredible vision, but just to get things moving and keep things ticking over. For me, that sort of signing, getting the right signing in that position, is going to be so telling as to whether or not you go up next season.
I completely agree. I mean, we've been blessed with some good defensive midfielders in the past. We've had Darren Potter, we had David Kasumu, who was so box to box it was unreal. Obviously Connor Coventry on loan as well. I would have liked to see Ethan Robson being given more of a run in Mike Williamson's side. I'm wondering if Robson might have been the foil for either a Paint or a Bate, sort of just as someone that will cover the hard yards at the back, do all the dirty stuff, just keep it simple. But Mike's let him go. I'm not too sure he's too keen on MJ Williams. I mean, to be fair to MJ, he played a lot of the games at right centre back, and
Sure.
he just got exposed so much. That Stockport away game, they exposed him within minutes, and we didn't sign him as a defender, but such was our injury crisis and the fact that Williamson just, for some reason, didn't even want to use Anthony Stewart. It was just like square pegs in round holes, and we suffered for it. But we definitely need that type of midfielder that doesn't mind doing the dirty stuff, keeps it simple, gives it to a Payne or a Bate for them to do their damage.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't even know if it's just about dirty work, but just that sense of knowing where to be. Because I think certainly in against Crawley, it felt like there was this massive gaping chasm in the centre of the pitch. But one thing I'm actually quite excited about from that point of view, Jonathan, is the signing of Luke Offord, which kind of brings us on to the defence. But when Luke Offord was at Crewe, he played sometimes in the middle of a back three, but what they did quite a lot was they used him as a vehicle to shift formation, because Luke Offord is very confident stepping out into midfield. He's very aggressive, really goes for the first contacts. And that sometimes takes him into a sort of deeper midfield position, which I actually think is going to help in terms of dealing with counterattacks, because you've got the option to go to a back four in certain phases of play or certain moments if you need to, but also you've got someone who can step into midfield and then maybe allow whoever you get to replace Bate or Payne to actually make a third man run and contribute going forward. So I really like the Luke Offord signing from that point of view.
Yeah, I mean, I've asked a couple of Crewe fans their opinions on Offord. Obviously, they're not happy that he's left because he's an academy product.
Sure.
And I get that, but it's from what you're saying, it sounds like it's maybe plugging a gap that we've not filled since Harry Darling sort of stepping out of defence and coming out with the ball, which is something that we have, as I say, we've missed since Harry Darling's left. I think hopefully that'll give Jack Tucker a bit more confidence as well, because he's much maligned in our fan base. And he doesn't seem to be getting any sort of love. I've backed him to have a good season next season. I just think that Mike Williamson will get the best out of him.
What gives you that confidence, Jonathan?
Just from what we saw before Jack Tucker got injured over Christmas, well, I think it was the FA Cup game, he played some really good games, and Mike Williamson spoke glowingly of him, saying how he is such a great defender and how he's one of the best one-on-one defenders that he's seen. And I just feel that Tucker needs some love. He seems that sort of player that needs the arm around the shoulder, pat on the back, thumbs up. And I just feel, hopefully, with Offord and Lawrence Maguire, that they'll give him the confidence to get better as well.
Well, let's talk about the Lawrence Maguire signing. I actually got the view of Crawley fan Sam Jordan. So from the Simply Reds podcast, here's what he had to say on Lawrence Maguire.
Having joined late in the summer transfer window for Chesterfield, Lawrence Maguire went straight into our starting 11, playing on the left-hand side of a back three, and definitely showed his qualities from a defensive point of view, and being able to win headers at set pieces and move up the pitch from the left-hand side. Left-hand side centre defenders are hard to come by, but Lawrence demonstrated that he's got the capability to play in League Two and did very well for us. Interestingly, we had a 5-game spell in March and February. He didn't play, and we actually won 4 of the games in that 5-game spell, so didn't miss him too much. He also actually got sent off in our game at MK Dons in December, but obviously went on to have a very good 2-game spell against MK in the playoffs. Having playing an attractive style of football at Crawley, he'll definitely suit MK Dons' style of play, and the MK Dons fans can definitely look forward to having a player that wears his heart on his sleeve, strong in a tackle, likes to bring the ball forward, and is good at set pieces.
How does that sound to you, Jonathan?
Wow. Yeah. These 2 defenders have just sound exactly what we need. I mean, we were discussing in our group chat about what happens with Daniel Harvey now, because Mike Williamson's taken the option to extend his contract by a year, and now with essentially they're both left-footed, aren't they? Offord and Maguire, I think.
I know Lawrence Maguire is. I think Luke Offord's right-footed, actually.
Oh, okay. But it's going to be interesting to see how Daniel Harvey comes into this equation now, because now he can play wing back, but there's no way he's getting ahead of Joe Tomlinson with the form that he showed last season. And I don't think Daniel Harvey's the type of person that's going to be sitting on the bench for over half the games of the season. So be interested to see if we get some money for him and he moves on. But
well, Jonathan, I'd like to discuss Daniel Harvey with you, because I listened to the excellent MK1 podcast this morning with Liam Connolly and Joe Fries, and I think the one thing that stood out was this sort of area of intrigue where, you know, when I think of Daniel Harvey, I think of a really big athletic left back who's very good at getting from end to end, if you like, and probably good for 5 or 6 goals getting in at the back stick. I actually almost think he suited Graham Alexander's style more than Mike Williamson's, because I don't think he's super technical. He's certainly not as good technically as Joe Tomlinson. And if you're signing probably a first choice left centre back, and you've got Joe Tomlinson, who's going to be your first choice left wing back, with Brooklyn Alunga possibly in the mix as well, is there going to be space for Harvey? And actually probably would be better off cashing in and trying to get a 6-figure fee for him.
Yeah, I mean, that's the theory that I'm going with. I don't suspect Lawrence Maguire's come in to sit behind Daniel Harvey on the bench. I'm sure Lawrence will start majority of games, and if Harvey stays, he will relish the competition. Trust me, he's got that mentality of, right, you're gonna kick me out the side. I'll show you. He puts his body on the line, as he's said previously. He'd slide tackle his nan for 3 points. So he's got that passion and desire. Again, back end of last season didn't quite work for him. Couple of key mistakes defensively, but he's adapting. He's trying to adapt to that left centre back role, and I think the partnership with Tomlinson was blossoming before Tomlinson's injury. But it'll be interesting to see if Harvey's still with us come the start of August.
Yeah, very interesting. I guess left wing back is probably the one area that doesn't need too much addressing, and I suppose right wing back is a really interesting position for me, because although I would regard Cameron Norman as one of the better right backs or right wing backs in League Two, based on his consistency over the last few years, certainly for Newport, I think he's a very driven right back. I don't necessarily know that he's technical enough or possibly even attacking enough for what you'd want. And I'm wondering if you'd actually prefer to have a sort of converted winger type at right wing back who can offer you a real attacking threat and maybe take some of the attention off the box midfield.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Cameron, when he played last season, I thought he didn't let anyone down. He was committed. He's physical. The one standout game for me was the 5-3 away at Harrogate towards the back end of the season. He was brilliant that game. He was forward a lot. I think he got 2 assists that game. Could have had a goal, and that was probably the best we'd seen of Cameron Norman all season. Obviously, with Kieran Lofthouse coming in, you knew that Lofthouse was going to get the majority of the game time, and that did affect Norman a bit. I thought he did all right at right centre back when Williamson finally dropped MJ Williams. I thought, wow, okay, physical right centre back, and he did a job to a certain extent. But I think we are going to get another right wing back in, maybe as competition, unless he thinks Phoenix Schultz is good enough. But I still think Phoenix needs a loan before he finally
where
gets
do you
in the
think you'd
side.
loan Schultz at? To National League South sort of level, do you think?
Yeah, National League South, National League North, sort of just get him a full season in the National League to sort of bolster him up physically and get him ready for the men's game. Probably the same with Charlie Waller and who's the other one?
Well, Callum Tripp won the Apprentice Apprentice of the season.
Yeah, that's it. Callum Tripp. I think Callum Tripp needs a National League loan possibly as well. I know a lot of fans have said get him more involved in the squad next season, but I'm not sure he's going to get the regular game time that he needs at his age. So I'd probably loan him out to, as you say, a National League North, National League South side. Get him a full season. Maybe like
how do you think, just as an aside there, Jonathan, how do you think the club should approach the loan policy? Would you believe in arranging those sort of loans that we've talked about right here, right now, so that these players know where they are? Or would you actually go, let's actually work with them in pre-season and give them a window to show what they can do, so that if we loan them out, we loan them out, but we know where they are in terms of up against our senior players, and you can kind of get a more of a first-hand barometer of where they're at. Because I think there could be some value in that, because let's say someone like a Charlie Waller has an incredible pre-season, all of a sudden you might be looking at him as a contender to operate in one of the 3 centre-back positions, and that might save you a bit in the budget for other positions. Callum Tripp, you're not winning Apprentice of the season for nothing. So is there something worth giving him a go in pre-season and seeing how he gets on, and then maybe in late July or August actually loaning them out if you feel like that's the best thing?
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that, and I believe Mike Williamson will do that. I'd say our pre-season fixtures would suggest that he is going to give the youngsters a chance. We've got we're away at Wealdstone, we've got Barnet, we've got another couple of non-league ones, and I imagine it'll be just before we've got Portsmouth and Wayne Rooney's Plymouth Argyle in pre-season. You'll maybe see some of the younger kids go out.
John Massinio's Portsmouth and Wayne Rooney's Plymouth Argyle.
Yeah. So yeah, I'd definitely say give them all a chance. Even the young goalkeepers. We've signed Seb Stacey on a pro contract as well, and he was actually warming up with both goalkeepers in the second leg against Crawley, and he looked really sort of good and agile. Like, I know that's just practice before warming up, but for Williamson to say to him, right, just go out and see how you feel, and yeah, it's looking good, and hope that Ronnie Sanford gets a bit of a chance as well. Another young goalkeeper. Everyone seems to have forgotten that he's still at the club, but yeah. But obviously, I think that's a position we're definitely going to recruit on come before August.
Do you think there's a chance that Sanford or because you got Nathan Harness in the goalkeeping equation as well, and then Craig McGillivray, I imagine, is one of those where a bit like Lee Nichols, where he's too good a shot stopper to be number 2, but not good enough with his feet to be your number 1, especially for the style that you want to play. So I would imagine you're going to look at a PL2 loan, and then probably have Nathan Harness as your sort of backup goalkeeper, if you like. But then that puts Sanford and Stacey in an interesting position again. Do you keep them around the squad, or do you loan them out and give them first team football?
This is it. This is the $1 million question. I mean, I wouldn't be against maybe starting Harness at the start of the season if he has a good pre-season. I mean, he had that loan at Gateshead, so he'll be sort of familiar with the football because they've not changed their style too much since Williamson's left. So he's obviously got that win at Wembley in the FA Trophy as well. I think it was that they won. So he knows he's coming in sort of in a positive mindset. I've still got this feeling McGillivray will probably leave.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, from what we were told, he sort of forced that move to Stevenage a little bit, and yeah, I don't think we're gonna. I'll be surprised if he's there at the start of the season. But the latest rumor seems to be we're making an ambitious loan bid for Brighton keeper Tom McGill. I think it is. I think he's like behind Beale and Rushworth in the pecking order, and.
Well, Brighton, I think it always seems to be a good. So I don't know about Tom McGill. I've not heard of him before this morning, but I definitely think you always inclined to think with Brighton, their young players more often than not have something about them.
Absolutely. I mean, we got Warren O'Hara from Brighton. We actually signed him in like that first full season. He was brilliant. So Brighton don't sign duds when it comes to players, or very rarely sign duds. They know what they're doing. So, and as you say, you've got, when you see what Carl Rushworth did at Lincoln and then did at Swansea, and then you've got Beale, what he did at Sheffield Wednesday and Oxford, you're sort of a bit more confident that it might actually work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I know it didn't work out with Marshall, but I generally agree. If you want to play your style of football, getting the PL2 goalkeepers on loan is probably the best strategy, because you normally get goalkeepers that are actually higher up the league. Sometimes experience is really valued in goalkeepers. So that's why you can sometimes get goalkeepers that are better than League Two, in League Two. Thanks for all your lovely comments, by the way. Great to get so many of you on board. Piercy said the 5-3-2 setup provides no width, as you say, if teams block out the midfield. MK Dons can't play. Yeah, I'm expecting it to be 3-4-2-1 predominantly next season. He'd say I'd like to see Jacob Badou come in on a free as another centre back. A couple of right wing backs available. I'm not sure Zach Swanson's going to be a realistic signing, but Joel Senior, I think, is a great shout as well. So thanks for your engagement, Piercy. Question from Rainbows. Dan Kemp has done well with a couple of clubs, Hartlepool and Swindon, but not so much at MK. This is something that surprised me as well, Jonathan, because there's been a massive sort of contrast between Dan Kemp's form at MK Dons and his form at Hartlepool, who are, Hartlepool and Swindon are arguably worse sides collectively. And yet Dan Kemp individually has stood out a lot more. Do you think there's something to do with him being the main man at those clubs and not being so much at MK, or how would you sort of
absolutely? You've hit the nail on the head there. I mean, he pretty much was the main man at Swindon. I know Charlie Austin was there, and Charlie Austin spoke so highly of him when he left. You know what Charlie's like. He says it as it is, and he said what a great character he was, and how brilliant he was. It just, I've always thought that he tried too hard to impress when he came back, because it was almost like, right, now I'm going to get my chance at MK Dons. He was signed by Liam Manning, never really got a chance under Manning, for whatever reason it was. Dan Kemp actually came out, when he came back, he came out and said that it wasn't MK Dons that forced the move to Swindon. He said to Graham Alexander, if you're not going to play me, loan me out. And that was mutually agreed. So it was Dan wanting to play games himself that wanted to prove himself. And he flourished that first half of the season. I mean, I think he won Player of the Year for Swindon, didn't he? I think as well, which is quite surprising. Considering he went back in January and he got Player of the Season. But there is a player in Dan Kemp in there. I think you've just got to give him the freedom in the side just to see the best of him.
Yeah, I think that's going to be really, really important. You've certainly got the best out of Max Dean, Jonathan, and I really want to talk about Max Dean's 23-24 season because I love his energy. He seems to have this great balance where, on the one hand, when you need him to be, he's super aggressive, and if you need him to get into a goal-scoring area and gamble on the near post, he can do that. But then he's also scored a lot of his goals by actually maybe retracting his run a little bit and then waiting for the right moments and sort of pouncing at the right moment. So his timing and his movement is so impressive. And yeah, I think it looks like you've got a 7-figure asset on your hands.
Yeah, and there's a lot of fans that are maybe sort of thinking we're probably not going to see Max Dean in August. I think the 3-game ban that he's got hanging over him might help us a bit, but I still think people are going to take the gamble on him. He's a different animal. I mean, when he was injured, you could notice a difference up top. There wasn't the same energy. He wasn't pressing from the front. There was no pressing from the front, and it was noticeable when he wasn't there. And then he came back against Walsall in the second half and just completely changed the game single-handedly. He's got this knack of pouncing on defensive mistakes. It's like he's got a sixth sense. There's at least 3 or 4 goals where the defence are passing it amongst themselves, and the next minute he's nipping in and scoring. He's also got goals like Mansfield and Notts County in his locker where he can be one-on-one with a defender and he can shift it onto any foot.
Yeah, or just elude a defender and leave them on their backside and then get a shot away.
Absolutely. I mean, I do love his passion, and it did boil over against Crawley, hence his suspension. I'm not sure if you actually saw the challenge why he's been suspended. It was a little bit naughty and it was a little bit over the top, but I think that was a lot to do with the Crawley defence not giving him an inch and sort of in his ear and winding him up as well. You could see that a lot of the defenders were in his ear, and when he had the penalty saved, a lot of the defenders were trying to wind him up. And he's a wind-up merchant himself, but he doesn't like being wound up. So, but if we keep Max Dean next season, then I'll be very surprised, put it that way.
Yeah, Piercy said Laurent Ladge to replace Max Dean if he goes. This is someone who's, I think, very highly rated for his work at Aldershot last season. I'm not an expert on the National League myself, so I can't speak with too much first-hand information, although get in the comments if you're familiar with Laurent Ladge. But I know the likes of Tom Williams, who are National League experts, and Off the Line blog and NL Musings are all big fans of Laurent Ladge, so maybe he could be the type of player that's ready for the step up, and you'd have a few quid if you did cash in on Max Dean. The other point from the financial aspect while we're on it, Jonathan, is Matt O'Reilly could leave Celtic, I think, this summer, and I believe there's some sort of clause where MK Dons might get a percentage of the profit that Celtic make or the fee that Celtic receive. I don't actually know the specific details about that. I don't know if you do, but is that a source of optimism for MK Dons this summer in terms of what the budget might look like?
It certainly is, although Pete Winkleman's not known for giving the cash straight into the transfer kitty. Obviously he runs the hotel and the businesses inside the stadium as well, and we've got the training ground that we're supposedly getting, but though we've not really heard too much of it recently. And I think if Pete Winkleman lets Mike Williamson spend the money wisely, and I think Williamson will, you can see from the first 3 recruits that he's thinking about last season, how we can improve the squad. And I just hope he gets the same back in his maybe Russell Martin got when Russell Martin was here. That's summer where we got Troy Parrott, we got Mo Isa, we got Scott Twine, and Harry Darling as well in the January. And if Pete lets the manager do the signings and the talking on the pitch, then there's no reason why we can't go a step further next season. I think automatics has to be the bare minimum. That's not being big-headed. That's not being
I think that's realistic. Yeah,
arrogant. I just think League Two slightly weaker this year. There's not your
agreed.
Stockports, Wrexhams, Mansfields. I mean, it's still going to be tough. I think Doncaster have recruited well so far this season. I think Bradford have strengthened. I think Chesterfield will be there or thereabouts. I think Notts County with a pre-season will be up there as well. So it's not going to be easy, but I still think automatic promotion has to be the bare minimum at Stadium MK.
That makes a lot of sense, I think. I just wanted to touch on, you mentioned investment in the training ground. Now, forgive me if I'm wrong, because I'm working a little bit off of memory, which isn't always, sometimes it's accurate, sometimes it isn't. From what I can remember, the facilities at MK Dons in terms of the training hasn't actually been that great in recent years. So do you think that's going to be quite an important step in terms of improving the facilities?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it was last year or 18 months ago, they said that they got the plans for the MK Bowl. So we were going to get the bowl as a training facility. But we haven't really heard too much after that. At the minute, I think they're training at a private school, if memory serves me right. And then if the weather does get bad, they've got the 3G pitches as well. So it's holding us back in so many ways, because if you're a player coming to our training facilities, it's not great. And I think a lot of the good players that we've got maybe come in because of the managers that we've had at the time, and maybe like Liam Sweeting as well has convinced them. And I just think it's holding us back. You look at just trying to think, I think it's Doncaster that have got decent training facilities, and there's a lot of League Two clubs that do have decent training facilities. But at the same time, there's a lot of League Two clubs that are probably like us and training at different schools. I just want Pete to invest in that, because then that might take us the next step as to where he sees us in the future, sort of maybe flirting with the Championship.
Where do you think MK Dons are with Pete Winkelman at the moment? Do you still see a long-term future of growth under his ownership of the club?
This is a difficult one to answer, because you could ask 100 MK Dons fans the same question, and 50 would still back him, and 50 probably wouldn't back him. Maybe I'm exaggerating there, but for me, he needs to stay out of the limelight and making decisions like he did at the playoffs with segregating the fans and separating the away fans, splitting them in half like he did for Wickham as well. It doesn't make any sense. And I think all MK Dons fans will be grateful for Winkelman and what he's done for the Milton Keynes Dons and things like that. But some of the decisions he makes, like for the benefit of the football club, sometimes just don't make sense. And I think he needs someone in there to say to him, look, it's a good idea, but I think you should. Someone with a footballing brain, like a footballing background, because people.
Well, hang on, isn't that meant to be Liam Sweeting, Jonathan?
It is meant to be, and part of me thinks, does he communicate that with Pete? Because, as I said, he came out after we got confirmed in the playoffs and basically said anyone that you basically won't sit in your season ticket seat, and we're going to have you all together as fans, maybe to make it look better on Sky than our fan base is, because obviously we don't get, it doesn't look, well, we don't get many fans for the 30,000 seat stadium, so it does look like a soulless.
I don't know. I think a lot of these, a lot of the time, you know, those photos that you see on that do go viral from on social media. I think a lot of the time people turn up with a camera like an hour before kickoff, and they film the particular stand that doesn't have anyone in, and actually everyone's in the cow shed. So I feel like that kind of gets a little bit distorted sometimes externally.
Yeah, I agree with that to an extent. But I just think that I think even Liam Sweeting needs to really sort of, because I think people may be scared to tell Pete what they really were thinking. I don't think even managers. I think there's only really Russell Martin that's maybe said to Pete, "Look, if you back me, I'll show you what I can do." I don't know if any other managers really sort of said that to him as such.
So do you think, because Liam Sweeting is someone who a couple of years ago was regarded as an incredibly important figure at MK Dons, and I think that he's built up a lot of faith and a lot of trust in his processes. Mistakes were clearly made in the 22-23 season. Couple of I suppose you'd say questionable managerial appointments, although you would argue that Mark Jackson has since done really well in Australia, hasn't he? I think probably Graham Alexander was a bad fit, but I think he's done well to get Mike Williamson. So for me, I would be inclined to say that Liam Sweeting, I think my question to you earlier sort of framed things the wrong way, because I do actually have a lot of faith in Liam Sweeting as a footballing mind. Clearly mistakes have been made, and clearly he's probably learnt a lot from the last couple of years. But do you think that it's a case of Liam Sweeting needing to get a bit more autonomy at MK Dons? Do you think Pete Winkelman is sort of too involved and he's a bit more of an emotional decision maker, whereas Liam Sweeting has more of a logical mind, which is probably better suited to a smart modern day football club?
Absolutely. Again, you've hit the nail on the head there. I obviously don't know Liam Sweeting personally, so I don't know if he is that type of person to tell Pete if he's wrong. I've only met him a couple of times, like literally at like away grounds. He's walked past me, but as you say, he's shown in the past, Liam Sweeting, that if you give him the tools, he can get the right players in. You look at what he did next to Russell Martin. You look at the squad we built, and arguably we should have got promoted that season with what we had, and it didn't work out. And then the following summer, taking all them risks buying the young players, your Darragh Burns, your Dawson Devoys, your Connor Grants, it just didn't work out. And sometimes it doesn't work out, and then you're behind in your planning and where you want to be, and it obviously did set us back.
And then Jonathan, just to come in on that, I think the Graham Alexander appointment, part of it was a little bit of panic, and I think the club, I don't know. I don't have inside information on this, but I don't know if Graham Alexander would have been a Liam Sweeting choice. I wonder if it was just a case of he did a good interview and made a good impression on Pete Winkelman, and actually maybe Liam Sweeting, if he had been left to his own devices, might have made a different choice, because it doesn't seem like a typical Liam Sweeting appointment, and I think it was a club that was sort of panicking and going for short-termism, as opposed to sticking to their stylistic principles, which you've kind of gone back to under Mike Williamson, which I think was the correct decision. And I think you've got to credit the club for sort of rectifying that issue very early on.
Yeah, definitely. And as you say, if buts and maybes, but if we'd had Mike Williamson at the start of next season, we might be talking as a League One club, given the form that we had when he came in. And as you say, it's been brilliant. He's so calm, he's so measured, he's so thoughtful. His backroom team are brilliant as well. I think the psychology bit is brilliant. As I said at the start of the conversation with Jack Tucker, he also seems to, when he's fit, seems to get a tune out of Matt Dennis as well, because he could be the most frustrating player on the pitch, but he had a little run of games before he got injured where he was scoring when Max Dean was out, and I think that again, I think that's another big season for Matt Dennis.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think we're so fortunate to have Mike Williamson. I'd put him up there with probably Mousinho as like that sort of manager that can just stay calm, stay measured, keep his processes and keep it calm. And it looks like this summer he's just adjusting slightly and making us stronger in the areas that we need to, much like Mousinho did under Portsmouth.
Yeah, I think it's been largely very positive from Mike Williamson, and I think for me, straight from the first home game, you could see an instant improvement from Mike Williamson's MK Dons because, funny enough, I bumped into a couple of Bradford fans after that night on the train, and they were saying it was 4-1 to MK Dons, but it should have been 10-1. You know, they had, hit the post 3 times and had 3 1-on-1s or whatever. And so it was absolute dominance. And of course, you weren't going to sort of hit quite those levels every week, and you had to grind out a few results as well. But I think there's a real blueprint there that we've established under Mike Williamson. But I'm just wondering, he's just got to learn a few lessons, I think, as well, because he's still a very young head coach.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't disagree with that whatsoever. And as we've discussed, the signings that he's made, maybe filling gaps that were quite clearly missing last season. I mean, we haven't even discussed about Lemony Evans coming, which I think it could be a brilliant signing as well. Someone that's got winning mentality, knows what it takes to get promoted. Luke Offord was captain at Crewe. Maguire obviously got promoted last season. So it's all about the psychological as well as the physical presence. And if we can get the right characters in, the ones that can go to, dare I say, a Grimsby away on a Tuesday night and grind out a 1-0 win, sort of the grounds you don't really want to visit that we didn't really take advantage of. And I think of 0-0 at Newport as well. And there's other games that I could mention, and it's just about mentality. It's just about mentality for me. I think we've got such a good squad, and if Williams can just get us more structured defensively and just keep the attacking going, we're not far off being a really, really good side.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the exciting thing, and hopefully that mentality can come with the additions that you've made. We did touch on youth a little bit, and I know you've mentioned that Phoenix Schultz you feel is making some good progress, along with Charlie Waller and Callum Tripp. I wanted to ask you about Joel Anker as well, because he's supposed to be a young number 10. There's sort of been mixed descriptions of him. Some people have described him as a forward, some people have described him as midfield. So I'm guessing he's kind of a bit of a number 10. I don't know if you've been able to grab anything from the reviews of his loan spells or what the feeling is around him around the club.
Well, he seemed to make a real good impression in pre-season last season. He had a really good game. I think it was Northampton in pre-season. He really stood out as a really good player. Wanted to take players on. Didn't mind the physical battle as well, and I think he picked up an injury playing for the under-18s, and then he got loaned out in January. Can't remember who to. I think it was one of the local non-league sides, and he stood out. The amount of man of the matches he was getting, and goals and assists, and dare I say, if he bulks up, he reminds me a little bit of Sam Nombe.
Okay, interesting. So you'd call him an out-and-out striker then, would you, Jonathan?
I think he could do a similar job to Max Dean and Matt Dennis, to be honest, because I think he's got the confidence in him to take players on and to be to press from the front. And I honestly, I think as I say, if he bulks up, like if you remember, Sam Nombe bulked up before, I think it was 2021 season. And he really stood out when he bulked up, and obviously he's gone on to better things. And I just think if Joel Anker bulks up, I honestly think that he could be our next Sam Nombe.
Wow, that's really exciting. Because I've always really liked Sam Nombe when he first came through. I think it was in the Robbie Nielsen season. He came off the bench quite a lot, and you could see he had a lot of energy about him. So hopefully Joel Anker can make a similar impression. Where are you on Stephen Wern at the moment, Jonathan?
I like him. He's frustrating at times. Not Jonathan Lecco frustrating, but there's still that little bit of maybe takes too many players on at a time, or he picks the wrong pass. But I've been really impressed by him especially when he's come off the bench. It's almost like he could be like a difference maker. He's got the ability to go in behind as well. He even played as a false nine when we had no strikers away at Swindon and scored 2 goals. So for me, I was like, right, okay, we've got a player here, and it's weird because it feels like he said it himself. It feels like it's like a second opportunity at Football League, because obviously he was at Grimsby as well.
Yeah, he didn't do an awful lot at Grimsby, actually. He didn't get too many opportunities.
And yeah, for me, I think in Mike Williamson's system, he is in the right position, but I'd like to see him as a floating number 10. I just think he's someone that could cover both sides and be a danger down the middle.
I guess the dilemma you've got Alex Gilby, whose main strength is his aggression against the ball, and I think he scored a lot of your goals last season from turnovers from Alex Gilby, either winning the ball or forcing a misplaced pass, and someone like a Max Dean running onto it. So Alex Gilby has come to be a pretty important player. And then the question, I suppose, would be whether you want your second number 10 to be a super creative type that can thread the through balls. So if you've got neither Stephen, let's say for instance you were to play, I'm flicking you a V there, aren't I? I'll move my hand around that way. Let's say you've got Alex Gilby and Stephen Wern. Neither of them are necessarily through ball specialists. So would that be something that you should be willing to compromise in your number 10s next season, or do you say we actually really need one of our number 10s to be super creative?
Yeah, even if it's a backup option, even dare I say, even if Conor Grant gets a run in the side, he might be that number 10 that you're on about, someone that can thread the ball through an eye of a needle. And I've even had conversations where we're thinking, could Conor Grant maybe be one of the 2 midfield players sort of playing in that sort of role? And
I would have him, Jonathan, as the right-sided number 10 personally, Conor Grant.
He's not getting in ahead of Alex Gilby. There's no way he's getting in ahead of.
Well, could Alex Gilby play as the left-sided 10?
Yeah, sorry, because Gilby's left-sided. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it could work on the right-hand side. I still rate Conor Grant. In fact, me and Liam from MK1 still think there's a lot more to come from him. We've been huge fans of his since we've signed him. For whatever reason, much like Devoy, much like Burns, to an extent, much like Dennis, although that's more injury, you just haven't had the run in the side.
Oh yeah, Dawson Devoy's under contract for next season, isn't he? Because he had a loan spell at Swindon last year. I mean, this is really getting to make or break time for Dawson Devoy now, isn't it?
It really is, and from all that I hear from Ben, the Swindon fan, it worked out really well for him at Swindon. And believe it or not, they actually played him as a number 10, whereas at MK Dons he's been playing as a 6 in midfield. And
do you know what I think, Jonathan? Sometimes you get players who can be more creative when they're moved further forward, because being a number 6, it's actually you've got to create from a sort of standing start, because the tempo is very slower. Is slower. Whereas when you're playing as an 8 or a 10, it's actually more about you actually give yourself a bit of momentum, because you're in a phase of play where the ball's actually moving quickly. So it's about the odd one touch here or the odd thing there. So it can sometimes become easier to be creative as a number 10, because it's like it takes less. Whereas if you want to create as a number 6, it's really right. Go on, then here's the ball. You create something from a standing start, and sometimes that can be hard for the player. So I don't know whether there's an element to that with Dawson Devoy.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's I think we're blessed. We've got a lot of players that could play that advanced 10 role. I mean, you could name 5 or 6 that could arguably in our squad that we've got could play that role, and that's really exciting. But at the same time, then players are going to miss out because you can't fit 6 players into one position.
Yeah,
and maybe we might see a couple of them move on this summer, just so Mike Williamson can maybe get that number 6 that you've said, someone that can just be on the ball, play it simple. But it's so weird. We've got so many technically gifted midfielders for technically 2 positions?
Yeah,
3
well,
positions,
I suppose 4 if you want to call it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
It's going to be very competitive. I think the curious thing for me, Jonathan, is you've got 26 players under contract for next season, and yet we're still talking about quite a few question marks and if buts and maybes about the squad. So actually, it is part of the challenge this summer going to be offloading some of these players as opposed to actually bringing as much as just bringing new ones in.
Yes, definitely for me. I mean, Darragh Burns is going to be on loan to Ireland until, is it October, November time their season finishes?
November, I think MK1 said. Yeah.
So Darragh Burns is going to get that time. I think Lecco's got an ACL injury, so it's going to be difficult to move Jonathan Lecco on.
Sorry, Jonathan. Can I just come in on? I feel like I'm interrupting you a bit. I don't mean. I'm just curious to ask to just touch on Darragh Burns while you mentioned him, because he was signed as a winger. Now, when he was signed, it was off the back of having played a 3-4-3 under Liam Manning the previous season, where your 2 number 10s split, if you like, so it's like wide forwards, whereas Mike Williamson likes a box midfield. I'm not sure Darragh Burns is necessarily a number 10, so is he someone you could convert into a wing back, do you think?
Attacking wise, I think there won't be any issues. It would just be defensively, wherever he would track back. I mean, I know you're saying this modern day asking wing backs to track back, especially at this level, is difficult. But that would be my only concern, because I'm not saying that he wouldn't track back. I think he would. It's just whether defensively he would have the mindset of maybe a Cameron Norman, for example, or maybe even a Phoenix Schultz. It's whether we can get that mentality in him to defend as well as attack.
Yeah, that's the big question mark, I think. And then I think you mentioned Jonathan Lecco. Sorry, who else were you going to add to your list there?
So it was Jonathan Lecco has got an injury, I think, until at least Christmas. So if anything, we're not going to see him. And then is anyone going to take a risk on him in January? I'd probably say if the right offer comes in, I think Conor Grant and Dawson Devoy will probably leave. Right. To be fair, I think Conor Grant's in the sort of same situation as Dan Kemp, where he needs to move on from us to get more football. As much as I like him, and I thought at the start of Williamson's tenure that Grant was going to be his sort of player, because he got quite a good run in the side before he switched Gilby over to that side. So, be interested to see what happens with Conor Grant. Who else could? The 2 that I'm more concerned about moving on is obviously one's Max Dean, and whether people will take a chance on Joe Tomlinson, given his age and given what he did for us last season.
I think he could be playing in the Championship by now if it weren't for those long-term injuries he's had, or certainly Upper League One, because I think technically he's like, his long-range passing is absolutely unbelievable, Jonathan. Like, I've seen him ping a diag from the left wing back spot to right wing back. So technically his vision is absolutely stunning for League Two level. I think you do very well to retain him, but the injuries he's had, 1 or 2 earlier in his career, might just put off 1 or 2 suitors, which could end up working in your favour.
Absolutely. I mean, last season I think he did play the majority of the season, and he only had like a couple of spells out with injury or illness. But it's quite ironic how there's two phenomenal left wing backs in League Two, in Jody Jones and Joe Tomlinson, and you think if it wasn't for injuries, there's no way we'd see them at League Two level, because they're just. I keep saying to Tom Williams, and he agrees, that both Tomlinson and Jones are the two best left wing backs in the league, without any shadow of a doubt.
Absolutely. Just another comment here from Piercy. Thanks so much for your engagement, mate. Mike Williamson needs to have a plan B when things aren't going our way, but he's young and he can learn. So yeah, hopefully he can adapt. And it seems, based on some of the signings, that lessons have been learned, which is very encouraging, because we know what MK Dons can do at their best. Jonathan, to finish off, I've got a couple of questions for you. I know it's only the 10th of June, but just if you can summarise for me, what would be the reasons to believe that MK Dons will achieve that objective that you've set out of a top 3 finish?
Mike Williamson, for a start. I think that he, as you say, he's one of these managers that learns from his mistakes. So I don't think he'll keep making the same mistakes again. As I've said previously, I think the league's weaker, and that's no disrespect to the other 23 teams in the league. I just feel that it's weaker than last season.
Sure.
I think the fitness of Joe Tomlinson and keeping Max Dean is key. Alex Gilby backing up his numbers from last season as well. I think if he does that, I think we'll do well. I think if the back five settle and we get a few clean sheets at the start of the season, I think that'll breed confidence into the side as well, because I don't think we've got many clean sheets under Williamson from memory, which again maybe stopped us from getting automatics and ultimately promotion. So yeah, those are the main reasons I can think of.
And then on the flip side of that, is there any reasons you can think of to maybe doubt whether you'll achieve your ambitions?
Losing Max Dean and not replacing him sufficiently, losing Joe Tomlinson, not replacing him efficiently, not getting a goalkeeper in that's, dare I say, a Phil Marshall. We're desperate for such a keeper that's got such a strong mentality and can be brave on the ball and doesn't look like the ground's eating them alive when they make a mistake, especially in the way Mike Williamson plays. And just really, for me, I just hope the mentality, like if we go on a couple of games where we don't win, I just hope that the lads that were there last season their mentality isn't affected this season, and that they can go, right, we've lost a couple, let's win the next one and go on another run. You look at what Stockport did, you look at what Mansfield did, you look at what Wrexham did, even you could say Crawley as well. All the promoted sides all had that mentality of, right, we've lost, and then get it out of your system, win the next one, or get a point at the very least. And that's what we need to strive for if we want to get promoted.
Absolutely. I feel like it's I have to record some of these podcasts far too early to make a real prediction, because I've got to do 72 of them. But I guess I wanted to, can you give me, you've said top 3 very clearly is the objective. Can you just give me a number between 1 and 10 to just tell me how confident you're feeling right now about MK Dons meeting their objectives?
Given the signings that we've got so far, and given the squad, and given that I believe Mike Williamson has learnt from his mistakes, I've probably said this too early now, and I'm going to have this bite me on the backside by September where he's going to get sacked. 8. 8 for me.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice and confident at this early stage. Plenty to do, of course, between now and the end of the window. Key players to keep, lessons to be learnt, and additions to be made. But MK Dons certainly on the right track under Liam Sweeting and under Mike Williamson. And hopefully that can continue into a top 3 challenge next season. Hopefully I don't predict MK Dons to win the league with 100 points as well. I'm not going to jinx you again, Jonathan. Listen, thank you so much for watching. Thanks to Jonathan Harries for his company this morning and for his insight on MK Dons. A real pleasure to chat to you, Jonathan. Thanks for all the lovely comments, and thanks to you for watching at home. Once again, subscribe to EFL Debate. There's plenty more summer deep dives coming up over the course of the summer. So keep it locked to EFL Debate, and I'll see you again next time.